Yo, what's up? Welcome back to the Rogue's Passage. I'm Tanner Cherry, and I'm going to show you one of my favorite commander decks. This will be a deck tech for the Locust God. This is the second deck I ever built. It's been on our channel on gameplay episodes a couple times, and it was just, I don't know, it just spoke to me instantly, just creating a whole bunch of swarm of tokens and doing nasty things with them. This particular version here of the commander is from the Winter Secret Lair last year. And it really, I had to have it because it's basically like a xenomorph cave painting. And if you know anything about me, you know I love my alien stuff. I also do have a custom altered Locust God that I got my friend Tom to make for me. This one has just the full art treatment that was never really done to this card. And it also has the little nibblers flying over the text box. This is what I used for the longest time until this one came out. And now I kind of swap back here and there between them. I also have from Randy Galagos a couple signed insect tokens, which are just unreal. They're so beautiful. And then there's some RK Post ones as well here, which I used to use as well. Little scythers. Yeah, that's the commander stuff. We'll go over the mana base last, I guess. That's probably the least interesting part of a commander deck, but you know, it's your vegetables. You gotta have your vegetables. Speaking of vegetables, it is a 6 mana commander. Let's talk about ramp first. I think we have 12 pieces of ramp in this deck, and I do have the deck list. You can go look at in the description. You can follow along if you want. Yeah, we got 12 pieces of ramp in here. Let's start. Yeah, Thran Dynamo it's one of those cards you see in your hand. It can take you from 4 to 6, pretty easy, which is nice. Well, 4 to 7 really, but it's just kind of crucial for getting a 6 mana commander out because the whole deck sort of needs the commander on the board. So we got a really nice Into the Wormhole Thought Vessel. I ended up buying the Secret Lair because most every card in that Secret Lair went into this deck. So, of course, your Talisman of Creativity. This is the Is It Talisman. There's the Soul Ring from the Wormhole, the Galaxy Foil. Seething Song, of course, takes you from, if you have 3 mana, it can take you to 5. Best to get the commander on the board and then start having fun swarming your opponents. Sapphire Medallion, of course, and Ruby Medallion make our spells cheaper. Mana Echoes. This is a 4 mana enchantment. Whenever one of my locusts essentially enters the battlefield, it can add an amount of colorless equal to the number of creatures that share a creature type with it. So this is very explosive. I don't know if I've ever really actually popped off with this, but I can't wait until I do. Jessica's Will, of course, as well. Just an insanely good card. Can help you get the mana you need to cast things or get the commander out. Is It Signet is absolutely classic. Ashnod's Altar. Sacrifice the tokens and make mana. There's the Arcane Signet from the Into the Wormhole Galaxy Foil. And there's the Thran Dynamo. Okay, so that's our ramp. What do we want to do here? Well, okay, of course we've got wheels. Everybody would expect a package of wheels to be in a Locust God deck. We've got 10 in this deck. We're running Windfall. We're running Whirlpool Warrior, which essentially is one. Some of these wheels will do everybody. Some of these wheels will just do me. And you can kind of play that politically and strategically. Because sometimes people will want you to wheel and you can kind of do it to help them. Windfall's nice because it says each player discards his or her hand and draws cards equal to the greatest number of cards. So if I have 30 cards in my hand, I can draw 30, which will create 30 locusts and likely end the game. So we got Windfall. Whirlpool Warrior is for me, and you know it wheels me, and then I can sack it to wheel me again. Whirlpool Rider as well, kind of does myself. Wheel of Misfortune, really confusing card. I feel like every time I play it, I have to really read it and figure out exactly how it works. Each people choose different numbers and can get different effects, but usually you want to just wheel yourself. Wheel of Fortune. This is the first reserve list card I ever bought. I traded in a bunch of cards and just had my heart set on a real Wheel of Fortune from Revised for this deck because it's one of my favorite decks. So yeah, that was my first Gucci card I ever bought. Tolarian Winds. Discard your hand, draw that many cards. Time Reversal is each player shuffles. Yeah, these are just your package of wheels. This was from a Secret Lair recently as well. Jace's Archivist. This one kind of allows you to do it every turn, which is pretty nutty. And then Forgotten Creation. At the beginning of my upkeep, I can wheel if I like. This one here, I'm not actually sure if I'm going to keep it in. It is a 4 mana, discard all the cards in your hand, draw that many cards, and then retrace. I can kind of cast it again from the graveyard. Just haven't been able to cast it yet, so we'll see how it works. So yeah, the wheels, essentially you want to draw cards. Drawing cards creates locusts. Things you want to do with the locusts. This is essentially the package of burn. You want, when your locusts enter the battlefield, you want them to deal damage to your opponent. So we got impact tremors. Raid bombardment sort of gives them extra damage while they're attacking. That one could probably even be in the Anthem category over there. Goblin bombardment is a way that I can, so let's say somebody lands a, I can't remember the card right now, but it makes it so that propaganda, so that you can't attack. You can just kind of keep creating locusts and just throw them in their face, which is quite nice. Witty Roastmaster, kind of another impact tremors effect. Perforos is one of the best impact tremors effects. It deals 2 damage for each creature. And Fiery Emancipation. This one essentially triples damage. For my locusts, they would go from 1 to 3. I actually had a game that we're going to be releasing on the channel this weekend here, where I had Fiery Emancipation and Torbrand on the battlefield at the same time. We realized that the opponent is able to layer how these affect your locusts, essentially, which, if it was in my position, I would like it to do 2 extra damage from Torbrand to make them 3 damage, and then triple that to 9, but they're able to do it the opposite way, which I guess triples it to 3 and then adds 2, which makes them 5 damage, but still, I mean, you make a lot of locusts. It will end the game if you put these out. And then, yeah, Psychosis Crawler is just, whenever you draw a card, each opponent loses 1 life. This is another way to just kind of wheel and kill the entire table. So, let's go over to, this is kind of the Anthem section. We'll put Raid Bombardment from burn, I guess, over to here. Whenever a creature you control with power 2 or less attacks, it deals 1 damage to that player or planeswalker that creature's attacking. So it sort of doubles the Locust's power. Shared Animosity is one of the best cards for this deck. Whenever a creature I control attacks, it gets +1/+0 until end of turn for each other attacking creature that shares a creature type with it. So this just turns them into exponential damage, and it quite a great card to hold in your hand until you need it and play it on the turn where you just the game's over. Glass of the Guild Pact. So these little locusts are actually red and blue. They are 2 colors, so multicolored creatures you control get +1/+1. It's quite handy. A little 2-mana Anthem. And another 2-mana Anthem, Favorable Winds, flyers that I have get +1/+1. So that just turns our locusts into locusts with bigger teeth. All right, let's go to the copy section here. We've got, I'll talk about Spark Double first, because this essentially will double my Locust God. I'll play it and create a second copy of Locust God that is not legendary, so it will double my Locust creation triggers. It's always been a house in this deck. This one is one that I have not played with enough. It is from Doctor Who, Nanogene Conversion, 3 and a blue. Choose target creature I control. Each other creature becomes a copy of that creature until end of turn, except it isn't legendary. So my entire board of creatures becomes Locust Gods, but their entire board of creatures becomes Locust God too. So it's very strange. Like, if I were to attack, you would basically, they could block with everything. Everything kind of cancels out and kills each other because they're 4/4s, right? Power and Toughness is 4/4 on Locust God. So if everything becomes a Locust God, whoever has the most creatures that turn can get damage through. It's kind of strange, but it also allows my opponents to have multiple copies of Locust God on board. So if they have any way to draw cards, that could be really bad, because then they can create a bunch of locusts, which will block. This card, I have not been able to field test, but I think it's hilarious and weird, and I want to play with it. We have some just staples here. We got a basically Reality Shift, which is sort of a Swords to Plowshares in, or Path to Exile in blue, and a Mystical Tutor to be able to go find maybe likely a wheel or something of that kind. Now, draw section. This section is just making me draw more cards in a deck that I want to draw cards. Unctus is really great in this deck. If for specifically other blue creatures you control have, whenever this creature becomes tapped, draw and discard. So whenever I draw, I create another Locust. So it essentially, whenever I attack with my team, I create that many more and draw a bunch more cards. It's incredible in this deck. Teferi, Master of Time, I can activate on each person's turn, and that's draw and discard on each turn, or I can phase something out, and if you kind of, because you draw and discard every turn, creating a blocker every turn, you can kind of keep this thing protected and cruise it up to the take 2 extra turns, and every time I've done that, it usually means the end of the game. This is a recent addition that I've put in here because usually the deck draws so many cards, but if I don't hit a Reliquary Tower or some way to, or, you know, the Thought Vessel is 2 mana to be able to give me no maximum hand size. This is kind of like just, if I draw it, it hits the battlefield, then I don't have to discard all the cards. Just feels great, you know. Skull Clamp, absolute incredible card for a token deck. Whenever equipped creature dies, I draw 2 cards. So I kill a Locust and draw 2 cards, creating 2 more. So kind of busted in this deck. Oh, speaking of busted, this card is probably busted nowhere in the world other than this deck more, right? Sage of the Falls, 4 and a blue. Whenever Sage of the Falls or another non-human creature enters the battlefield under my control, I may draw a card. If I do, you discard a card. So like the fact that it says may is very important. If this and Locust God are on the battlefield, like, it triggers itself when you play it as well. So it just starts creating Locusts, drawing cards, creating Locust. You can essentially put as many cards in your hand as possible. You do have to do it properly. You kind of have to draw and discard in order properly. But yeah, this essentially, it's not infinite, but it's a lot. I can usually draw 60 cards and just swing out, and by that point I have the spell book in my hand. And yeah, I often throttle this one and don't play it if I'm playing in a pod where I don't want the game to just end immediately. Like if I see this card, sometimes I will either just discard it, or you can also just say in your play group, I'm going to play this and we'll cap it at 10 or something, right? Because I have the ability, you may draw a card, discard a card, and then we can just leave it at that. This will end the game almost every time, but you can rule 0 and play any way you want. You don't have to end the game if you want it to keep going. Rhystic Study, of course, if this card wasn't in the deck, you'd think I'm crazy, because I just want to draw cards. Jace the Mind Sculptor. This allows me to essentially brainstorm every turn, which creates 3 more Locusts, and that's about it. I mean, it also has the ability to bounce creature to a hand, so it's just a very good card in this deck. Another one is Jace Balern, Party Jace. I can use this politically, make sure everybody draws a card a turn, or I can just do it for myself. The mill clause is basically irrelevant. Dak Faden. This has been in here since I built the deck, and I can't take it out. Every single time I play this card, I gain control of a very powerful artifact, and it either draws me 2 cards and discards 2 cards a turn, or I get one of the greatest artifacts on the battlefield. So just never coming out. We've got an Invocation, Consecrated Sphinx. This card gets kind of nutty to track. It starts to draw a lot of cards, especially if someone else has one. Brainstorm, of course, just draw 3 cards, and yeah, that's the draw package. Now, one of the most important packages in this deck is ways to start doubling the amount of cards that you're drawing, or exponentially the amount the cards you're drawing, or the tokens, right? Roaming Throne will enter the battlefield and you choose God as creature type, and then you essentially have double triggers, just as the Spark Double would. So whenever time you draw a card, you'll create 2 Locusts, and that has been quite a good card in this deck. Reconnaissance Mission. There's 3 effects of this in here currently, which is actually 4. No, wait, 5, I guess. So this is a blank here that I need Enduring Curiosity. Is that what the... Yeah, Enduring Curiosity from the new set. I just don't have a copy yet, but that's the place for this card. These things essentially all say, whenever a creature you control deals combat damage to a player, you may draw a card. So if I connect with 8 Locusts, I draw 8 cards and create 8 more Locusts. And then the next turn I would have 16 to... It'll start to go exponential, or just ridiculously cruise up in numbers. So Curiosity Crafter does not say may, and I think Enduring Curiosity, let me just check on that. It does not, yes, it also says that you don't have the choice, so you got to be careful you don't deck yourself. Whereas Reconnaissance Mission, Coastal Piracy, and Bident of Thassa, These cards essentially all say you may draw a card whenever they connect, so you don't have to. You don't have to deck yourself. Enduring Curiosity, it'll be on screen here. Really looking forward to playing this with this card because if somebody wipes the board, it comes back as an enchantment and it just keeps on trucking. So yeah, these are the most explosive cards in the deck. You always, always, always want to see one of these. And I wish I had enchantment or some sort of tutor ability to be able to ensure that I see these, because this is how you really get cruising. And then to protect what you are trying to do, usually I have counter spells in this deck and everything just to protect my plan. Cryptic Command is probably the worst one, but I have an invocation of it that I got from Face to Face Tour last year, and I just want to have it in the deck. This is the one deck that I kind of Gucci'd out, so it's in here for style. It also does have the clause of tap all creatures your opponents control. So for 4 mana, I can counter a spell, return a permanent to its owner's hand, tap all creatures your opponents control, or draw a card. I could choose 2. So if my opponent does have a lot of flyers, it is also a way to get through. So it does have, a place in the deck. We got Mana Drain. It's really nice to have this in an opening hand. Catch a 4 mana spell or something, and then be able to use that mana in the next turn to be able to get your Locust God out. Fierce Guardianship, of course, it is just don't touch my Locust God. Just don't touch. This, I'll put the English version up on the screen here to the side. This is Bolt Bend. Essentially, Bolt Bend says the spell costs 3 less to cast if you control a creature with power 4 or greater. Change the target of target spell or ability with a single target. So it will cost just 1 red if you have your commander out, and if someone's trying to mess with Locust God, I can redirect it. This is from the Wormhole Galaxy Foil Edition, or Through the Wormhole Secret Lair. Yeah, this is the Lightning Greaves. Very, very good card. Abjure is actually kind of a niche counterspell that works really well in this deck. Sacrifice a blue permanent, counter target spell for 1 blue. So usually have some Locusts lying around that you can sacrifice for that. Got a nice little Swiftfoot Boots to protect the god. This beautiful Force of Will lives in this deck forever. And again, just kind of to be able to protect. I do find that I tap out with this deck. Like, it's funny that I'm playing this many counter spells. I regularly tap out for 4 or 5 mana spells. It seems like I'm never really holding mana up. So Fierce Guardianship and Force of Will have been really, really key players. This is our Strixhaven Mystical Archive Japanese counterspell. Just a really pretty one. Foil offer you can't refuse. I got this for winning a Pioneer Challenge last year at that face-to-face tournament. So I put it in the deck. Disallow. This one is quite powerful. It just sucks that it's 3 mana counterspell to hold up, but you can counter an activated ability or triggered ability, which, I mean, man, when you can do that and you can get it off, it is always just incredible. And then Mystical Archives Negate. So yeah, this is the protection package, and that is essentially the entire deck. We can scan through the mana base here as well. You can check it out on the link that I'll provide for the Architect. Command Tower, Sulphur Falls, Temple of Epiphany. Is it Boilerworks is nice because it's a 6 mana commander. Just knowing you have 2 mana on 1 card in your opening hand is quite nice. Frostboil Snarl. Totally fake Volcanic Island. We play with these in our play group. We printed proxies of that kind of stuff. So Prismatic Vista, Riverglide Pathway, Training Center. There's a Shivan Reef. Path of Ancestry is nice. It allows you, when you cast your commander, you get a scry. Mystic Sanctuary can buy back a counterspell from your graveyard. It's kind of, it usually doesn't hit from you because I don't have enough islands on the battlefield, but it's in there because it's pretty. Cycling lands in a deck where you want to draw cards. Makes sense. Ferris Lake, Fiery Islet, Steam Vents, another cycling land, blue. Thundering Falls Surveil land. These have been amazing pickups because every time you fetch, you can actually just go fetch and surveil if you're not going to use the mana. Command Beacon, sacrifice Command Beacon, put your commander from your command zone into your hand. Very good for when your commander ends up costing 10 mana. So you can just sack that. A nice old border Scalding Tarn. and the promo Reliquary Tower. And then I've been trying to fill out the mana base with these beautiful Phyrexian oil basics. They are just some of the most beautiful basic lands I've ever seen in my life. And I have all but 2. So I just need to get 2 more islands to wrap up the mana base in this deck. And yeah, essentially what you want to do is you want to draw all your cards. You want to create a bunch of locusts, and you want to just strip the flesh off of your opponents with insects. That's the Locust God. Thank you for watching my deck tech. I certainly didn't build this to be like the most optimized, although it is my most powerful deck. It's not CDH level, but it does kind of work very consistently for a 6-mana commander. So yeah, thank you for watching. If you have any suggestions, if you have any things that I haven't really thought of, or things that you play in your Locust God deck, please say it in the comments. We'll be back. Well, check out, I will link in the comments of this video the recent game that we will have posted playing with Daniel from Into the 99 and his buddy Logan. And yeah, it was a wonderful game. Got to do a lot of stuff with the deck. It definitely got beat up a bit, but it was a great game. Link to the deck description in the comments. Link to the video in the comments. Thank you so much. Really appreciate you guys. See you in the next deck tech. Bye-bye.